Greetings everyone and welcome back to 365 Days of Prog. Today we're going to be reviewing the album Frequency by the band IQ.
Hi, my name's Naomi. I'm an avid progressive rock fan, but I'm a long ways from knowing all the prog albums out there. But this year, I'm gonna give it a try. This is 365 Days of Prog.
You guys have no idea. It's getting really cold around here, and yes, I need stuff like this. This is warm and it's in my hands because oh my god, I'm freezing. I just wrote an entire script and my hands have just been exposed to, nature's coldness and I can't handle it. But speaking about coldness, apparently here it's pretty warm. It's like, what, 10 degrees right now, and there's places in the world where it's, blizzarding with snow and minus degrees, and apparently it has been the case with a lot of people that I've talked to recently, and I've talked to them over on Brent Everett's channel, which you might know as the Similitude of Prog. Yes, we did like this Prog panel with 6 of us. Some of us were like Nathan on Shuffle, Notes Reviews, we have Rhyme Signatures, and so many cool people we just chatted about, and you should really go ahead and check that video out. So I think that it's gonna be somewhere on top of here, so just know that it's there. But anyway, here's some of my favorite bits from this album. On the channel, I reviewed the album Ever by the band IQ, and in that video, while I never quite downright said it, I was basically implying that, well, this was a fun ride listening, to 2 IQ albums this year. It was nice, and I'm happy that it was over, and maybe next year I'll come back to them, but honestly, after being exposed to their music, I'm left not being that huge of a fan. Now, as it happens, despite me being a complete doofus thinking to myself that I was done and over with IQ for this year, apparently the answer was hidden right there in plain sight. Just a few days after that review, we've come to review yet another IQ album, which I totally didn't know this was on the list, and that one is 2009's album called Frequency. Now, Frequency is IQ's 10th studio album, which is definitely a landmark for them reaching so far in their career. And if you might not know this, it seems like from an outside perspective, IQ is just one of those bands that have somehow always been able to get gradually better and better. They've aged like fine wine, with their earlier albums being pretty good, although pretty much wavering in amounts of ratings, but with their later works being continuously rated high and considered to be great masterpieces one after the other. And when you think about it, I think that this trend kind of started maybe with this album, maybe with the ones before it. So when you come to look at it, if you're purely looking on ratings, then I personally looked over on the Prog archives, you can can see that this trend of starting to pop out some really good albums started all the way off in the year of 2000 with their album The Seventh House, which I reviewed on the channel. Then followed up of course by Dark Matter, and then followed up of course with today's album of topic, Frequency. But even after that, the band had released yet other stellar albums like The Road of Bones, which might be their biggest thing that they ever created, and for many this one is considered to be a prog classic. And even then they followed it up with Resistance, released in 2019, which currently stands as their final album in their discography until they get around to releasing yet a new album. But the thing is, despite objectively knowing that this band was just getting better and better as time went by, listening to their works actually didn't really spark any interest within me. I thought to myself, you know what, IQ are a really nice band and it seems like they have all the ingredients to create something really special, but they just seem to make these odd decisions that always deprive them of the real uniqueness and grandeur that they really could achieve. But apparently today's album is different. Now, let me be perfectly honest, when I finally did realize that I have yet another IQ album to review on the list, I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna get it over with, okay? I'm not gonna skip it, I'm not gonna replace it with any other album, I'm just gonna listen to it, get it over with, and then move on to the next anticipated album, which of course is Durham Visca by Koenji Hayake, which I'm really looking forward to. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna get into this one, and I never could have expected this album to be as great as it was. Now, right from the moment I sat down to listen to this album, while I didn't know it quite at first that this album was really something very much promising, I already could tell that this album was more. It had more to it. But I had to think to myself, well, what does this more actually means? Why is this album feeling to me like something that is more than what came before it? So I kept on listening, and of course the first track on this album is the title track called Frequency, which opens up very ambiguously with some recordings, radios, something saying that they bombed the military base in Hiroshima, and that was like, pretty cool. I liked it quite a bit, and then it transitions into this sort of heavy prog section, which to me sounded really, really good, but still not something that abnormal for IQ's music. But what of course at first seemed to me like, a pretty standard tune for IQ quickly developed into an epic of epic proportions, and this all came down to some few ingredients that I found here to be just amazing. The first one has to be the drumming. I never have remembered anything from IQ's drumming sounding just like this. The drum fills, the beats, the ways that it was constructed, the grooves and the overall vibes of the drums were just amazing. If there's one very repetitive section, it's not like the drum beat just has to be a constant loop that a computer can generate, and it certainly isn't on this first track and on this entire album as per se, because the drumming on here is really innovative. There's ingenuity to be found on it, and I noticed it right from the first second, and I loved it to bits. And secondly, I noticed the keyboards, which to me, as far as I was concerned, didn't really make a huge part in any of IQ's music that I listened to so far. And well, that's exactly what I mean by IQ underutilizing their abilities in the past. They had a keyboard player, and as far as I could hear, he was pretty much a pretty talented person, but he was just not receiving the spotlight, and for no apparent reason, because keyboards are basically the essence of prog, and if you don't utilize them correctly, you're missing out a lot of things. And when this album finally did make excellent use of keyboard solos and just fills and backgrounds as keyboards, I was so happy to hear it. And maybe as a consequence of all of this, and to top it all off, I feel like the main outcome that IQ has gone with this one had to be the fact that they finally realized that they were creating progressive rock, and the mission statement of progressive rock is to progress. And with neo-prog, most of the times it feels to me like bands are going backwards in time, going back to something which is much more basic, much less progressive, much more acquainted with regular rock music than progressive rock. And well, IQ seem to have broken this cycle on here and actually created something which is always shifting, it's always changing, things are new, things are exciting, much like good prog should be. And the thing which I pretty much most liked about this album so far is the fact that, well, it still sounded like an IQ album. Yes, it might be a bit of a cheat, you know, if a band changes everything about its sound, they don't sound like themselves. But with this album, they did sound like IQ, but like a very well realized band. Finally. But still, there was a lingering question. Why? Why was IQ sounding so good now? What has happened? And well, a quick Google search gave me a few answers, and honestly, exactly the ones I was expecting. You see, on the two IQ albums that I did review on this series so far, being Ever in the Seventh House, they both share the same lineup of 5 people. And well, after releasing Dark Matter in 2004, the band went into a 5-year hiatus before releasing this album, and in that time they've actually substituted 2 of their players. And these 2 new players are called Mark Westworth and Andy Edwards. And guess which instruments they're playing? Yes, they're playing the drums and the keyboards. I nailed it. I fucking nailed it. I knew. Even before doing any research, I knew that the drums and the keyboards were the main integral parts here that sounded differently. And now I'm not surprised to actually know that, well, 2 new players playing those exact instruments were added onto the band. And no, the thing that really makes me smile when I think of this is the fact that, well, the old-time members of IQ actually added along these newer players, and instead of just telling them, you know what, just learn what we've already done and, you know, don't go ahead and do new things. Instead, they probably gave them free rein to actually express themselves inside of the music, and well, it definitely shows on this album. And well, if this is the level of this album and everything that comes after it, I'm really looking forward to listening to their upcoming albums. So yeah, coming back to this album, after the opening track of Frequency, which to me is just a perfect track, a 10 out of 10 track, and definitely my favorite from the album, we moved on to some really great tracks as well, which also assured me that this was not just the one-time brilliance that IQ had, but instead they could remain consistently good throughout this album. My personal favorites from this one have to be Stronger Than Friction, Riker Skies, and my personal second favorite from the album, The Province of the King. But yeah, I'm not gonna say more about this album. I'm just really fussed about it. I'm really happy about it. I've listened to it multiple times now, and I've listened to it for the first time only yesterday. This album is really good, and I'm so happy to be saying this, because honestly, if it weren't for this one, I would have left off this year thinking to myself that, well, neo-prog and I were just not meant to be, and I wouldn't give it a chance. But after an album like this, a whole new world has been opened in front of me, and really I'm looking forward to getting to know more of this type of music, and hopefully there is more of this type of music. And as I see it, this is a Christmas miracle to me, because the last thing I wanted to happen this year is to completely disregard a subgenre of progressive rock, which was what was about to happen with neo-prog, but now it will not. So IQ, you have done well with this one, and I'll definitely be rushing over to listening to The Road of Bones when I get to 2023. So I actually really like this album cover. It was made by, I believe, Tony Lithgow, which worked with the band since basically the turn of the millennia. And personally, I really like this type of cover. You know, this is a cover I would expect Studio Hypnosis to do, but with real life people and props and I don't know. But instead, this one is just photoshopped, and you can tell, but in another sense, I kind of like it the way that it is. I think that it looks pretty freaking cool. One other thing, of course, that I love about this album cover is how well the music is conveyed through the album cover itself. Yes, the music on here does feel a bit spacey, a bit like it was played at nighttime, and yes, there's a lot of play with the entire frequency idea, and it's just really cool. And on another side note, I have to mention the IQ logo on this one. I think that when it comes down to incarnations of the logo, which is made up of 2 simple letters, this one is the best one I've seen so far, and it's pretty unfortunate to see that they didn't really utilize it anywhere else, because it's a really cool and simplistic design as well. So all in all, when it comes to the rating of this album, this is a rating that truly makes me tremble to think that I'll be giving a neo-prog album a rating like this one. And yes, this album will be getting a rating of 9 out of 10. But that's about it, guys. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for tomorrow because we're going to be listening to Doin Visca by the band Koenji, Hayake concluding that one as well. I of course want to thank my lovely supporters over on Patreon, so thank you so much to Clay Warner, Wrist of Kings, and Lindsay Haycox. You guys are just the best, and if any of you want to support me over on Patreon, you can find the link down in the description or in my about page. It doesn't really matter. But that's about it, guys. Have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Bye, guys.